All right, let me know when.
We are live.
Okay, great. All right, we are super excited to join you for another holistic solution today. I am Dr. Erica Steele, board certified naturopathic doctor, and all kinds of other things. And I'm here with my co host, Ferdinand, and I will allow him to introduce himself.
Welcome to the Holistic Solution, everyone. They call me Ferdinand, the bringer of balance, leader of many disciplines, and one of the hosts of the Holistic Solution. I'm here with the amazing Dr. Erica Steele, and she and I are bringing different journeys of holistic health together to strengthen the world. All right, so we're happy for every single one of y'all to be here. Thank you so much. And today we're going to be talking about meal planning.
Yes, exactly. Hold on one second. Sorry, I'm trying to get TikTok live.
Okay, got you.
Yeah,
Well, while
yeah.
you're getting TikTok live, I'll go ahead and dive in a little bit into my meal planning. So one of the
Perfect.
things that I've been doing for some years now is paying very close attention to how I eat. Yeah, it's very, very important. Yeah, it's very important, buddy. All right, relax a little bit, okay? So it's very important for us to eat healthy. To eat whole, not necessarily from whole foods, but we need to eat foods that are whole. So how do we achieve that? Right. Well, meal planning is a great way to go about it. And how I go about meal planning is I keep a crock pot on the countertop at all times, and it's always brewing what I call jungle soup. And I've been making jungle soup, or my family's been making it in some which way, shape, or form for at least the last 10 years. And that puts me in a position where I'm able to walk in the kitchen. Maybe we make a little bit of quinoa and we mix it with the jungle soup, and boom, I'm able to eat something that's got a lot of minerals in it, a lot of nutrition, and be able to get it fast. Because time is always an issue. When we're talking about adulting, we're talking about doing what we need to do in this life. Time is always a factor. So how do we get around that and still live a life that's whole?
Yeah. So I'd like to even take a step back further from that because I think we like to jump into things, right? And so we want to eat healthy. So all of a sudden today, now we're eating healthy. And what does that mean? And we're frantically going and grabbing and doing instead of stopping, being present with our mind, body, and our spirit, and collectively deciding what you're going to eat as a family together and including everybody in that process, right? So sitting down perhaps once a week and saying, okay, let's pull out our proteins, which proteins are we going to use, because that's how we're going to start building our perfect meal. So before we begin to build plans, right? Before we begin to build plans, we have to learn how to actually build a meal. And do that. The first thing we do when we're building a meal is we start with our protein. Now, it doesn't have to be an animal-based protein. It can be a lentil, it can be a black bean, right? It can be a plant-based protein source. It's just about knowing your proteins and what foods are protein sources, right? And then from there, knowing, okay, now I'm going to add my complex carbohydrates, my fruits and my vegetables, right? And being Afro-Indigenous and being part of the Black community, we need to eat more of an alkaline diet and less of an acidic diet. And so that also, we have to be very, very mindful of our fat content. So we start to build a meal, and then from there, we can plan as a family our lunches, our dinners, and then inevitably breakfast and snack.
I appreciate you bringing that up because one of the things that I miss often in my meal planning is fats. And this is something that I'm working towards getting better at. I need to add more avocado, more purslane or portulaca, um, to get those omega 3s and those omega 6 fatty acids from a plant source. And I think that this is one of the areas where maybe a lot of people are falling at, is in the fats that are good for the body as well as iron, right? But can you touch on the fats for a second and what we should be adding to our meal planning?
Yeah, so people tend to eat way too much fat, right? So let's look at fat as a macronutrient. What is the purpose of our fats? Our fat is for long-term energy source, right? So if we are on the couch most of the time, we're not going to be able to burn off really the amount of fat that we're consuming. I take a lot of data on my patients. So when my patients are tracking their, food, I'm able to look at the macronutrients. So your macronutrients are your large nutrients, your proteins, fats, and carbs. Proteins help your body to repair and heal, fats, long-term energy storage, and carbohydrates, your short-term, right? And so people tend to have an imbalance and we want to feel full, right? Or we have an emotional need. So we'll tend to fill up on fat. And most restaurants, we talked about this before, they sell food based off of fat. So you're eating all of this fat, you're getting full, but you're really not getting all of the other, phytonutrients, all of the other, vitamins, minerals that you need. So really being important to pay attention that your fat is no more than 20% of your total caloric ratio if you just want to lose weight. If you want to maintain, your 25%. So depending on what your calorie is, that's how much pretty much gas is in your gasoline, right? Your gas tank to burn off. And then you have different parts of the car, right? Your protein, your fats, your carbs. How you determine that, there's a whole aspect to that, which we can get into in another show, but we'll talk more about the planning side of it in this one.
Yeah, it's definitely important to start with the basics: carbohydrates, fats, and everything else that I'm missing. But
Right.
yes, this is what we definitely need, because I think a lot of us aren't starting with that. We're starting with, like I said, hey, I got a bowl of vegetables in here, and I got a bowl of vegetables in here, and I got some quinoa. All right, I'm eating healthy, right?
Right.
Iron, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does the audience need to do about adding more iron to their diet and their meal planning?
So it's antioxidants, right, will help, but also antioxidants like your berries, your strawberries, your raspberries, that kind of stuff, right? And also too, when we're looking at that, our B complex, so things that have folic acid in them as well. So legumes, nuts, seeds, but you're also your green leafy vegetables. But it's not a one size fit all approach. So it's important to recognize that when we're looking at building iron, right, there could be so many reasons why somebody's iron is low. We definitely know that we need more things like chlorophyll, think green, right? Chlorophyll, chlorella, but also realize that those things are detoxifiers too. And a lot of the reason why people have iron issues is really a liver function and a toxicity issue. And so when you start to put in all those blood builders that actually help, a lot of times people will have toxic reactions because of that. So being mindful of that, plus also too, there's interactions with medications, and things like that, because just, I want people to realize, like, it's not an us against them. And wherever you start on the holistic journey is wherever you start. So some patients would come into my office literally with like a bag of 13, 15 pills that they're taking every single day. And I wouldn't shame them, but instead really take them in, because they're just simply a medical refugee at this point, right? They are operating in a system that doesn't teach nutrition, right? We should all know what a macronutrient is. We should all know easily, like, okay, I'm having 150 grams of protein today, or I'm doing, no more than 30 grams of fat every single day. We should know this information right off the top of our head, but unfortunately we don't. And why is that? Because we're in a deeply colonized westernized system. So it really is getting back to the basics. How much water are you drinking? So you have to plan for your water, right? And then making sure you plan for your protein, making sure that you plan for your complex carbohydrates, making sure that you plan for your fat. Now, there's a process to planning, right, which is really what we're going to go to. So now that you've kind of figured out, and we can talk more about an actual meal, we can go on and on and on about that. But let's say now you have created this structure for this meal. Now you need to I try to find, like, okay, I'm going to set these in for lunch. I'm going to do maybe lunch and dinner is going to be the same. Like I'll use an appliance like a crock pot, or even like a Ninja Combi, which I absolutely love. You can literally put food in there from like frosted, like still frozen, and 30 minutes, family of 4 done. And it protein, starch, and then your veggie. So I think it's about getting the tools and getting the education needed and prioritizing the time to prep. And there's all kinds of different structures on prepping. So we can talk more about that.
I think it's really important to think about too how many times a day that we eat, right? So for me, I eat more often than not once a day, right? And I might have like a snack, like a piece of fruit or something like that after I eat. Every now and again, I might have some pretzels or some chips or something like that, right? But I try to keep it to around the same time period, so somewhere between noon and 6, I'll eat that one meal. But I think that my question that I have for you is, even though we know that intermittent fasting is really good for the body, how many meals a day should people be eating?
It really depends. Again, your food is a tool. So it depends on what you're actually going to do with your food, right? And we don't think of our food that way. We're thinking more from an emotional perspective. But so let's say I want to cut weight, right? Or I have a metabolic issue like hypertension or diabetes, and I want to try to re-regulate my blood glucose, right? So I could consider doing an intermittent fast. However, right, this is the safety part. You have to still make sure that you're managing your blood glucose, which means you need to monitor it, right? So where I normally naturally, like I'm around 1 o'clock where I'll start eating for the day, but I'll also have like tea before then, right? To really help soothe my digestive system. I may have some fiber in my tea, et cetera. And I get my digestive system prepared, right? And then I've naturally, based off of our circadian rhythm, because remember, with our circadian rhythm, we're cyclic. So I tend to, have trained my body to really start eating around 1 o'clock. And then maybe I'll stop around 6 or 8, but that's not a conscious thing. That's a naturally occurring thing. And so I think that instead of getting into these like generalized like rule of thumb, I think in holistic medicine, it's more of listening to your body and what works for you. Now, that doesn't mean that you haven't collected bad habits, or maybe you have severe nutrient deficiencies that are also, or infections that are driving the fact you may not be hungry or you may not have, an appetite. But remember, you can train the body. And I think that's what we forget is like the body will give us feedback. So maybe it goes, okay, you try out at like maybe a 10 or 11 o'clock is your start time, and then maybe last a little bit longer. I do really like intermittent fasting for metabolic issues. I really do. And I think going from somebody who hasn't eaten a healthy diet to somebody who, is eating healthier, I think that it's a really easy transition for them. But it's tricky because I still would recommend that you make sure you get all your calories. So, higher protein, lower fat, mid-range carb, complex, that's going to do really well with that type of structure, right? Where if you're not as loose, then, you may, want to do a little bit more of a combination. So it really just depends. It's all based off of your numbers. So you've got your calories, you've got also your height, your weight, right? Your waist measurement. All of those are metrics that we look at, right? Your total body water on the scale, your total fat mass, all of these are metrics, and we put it in, and then we kind of determine also based off of your lab work what we would do with your macros, because your macros are a tool and it's just energy in, energy out. So that's why it sometimes becomes difficult with general terms, right? But let's say, like, for instance, yourself, and you're like, hey, I'm curious. I just want to learn. I don't want to go through all the testing stuff. I just want to get a figure out. Really, it's trial by fire, right? So your body is going to give you feedback of what's going to work. So maybe you try intermittent fasting for, a month or so, right? You got to give your body time to adjust. And then maybe your body's like, I don't like it. But be mindful, because you don't want to keep changing diets over and over and over again. That's why I like focusing on macros rather than a diet. You can be a vegetarian, you can be a vegan, you could be, I don't recommend keto or anything like that. We can talk about that. Fight me, I just really advocate for consistency, but also people really being mindful of listening to their body and not needing like a guru to give them permission. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And I think that in a later episode, one of the things that we need to dive in is what how what listening to your body is, like what that actually sounds and looks and feels like. Because I think that there are a lot of people out there who, they do listen to their body, but they're listening to one portion, or they listen to one part, right? So now they're getting an illusion versus getting the whole picture. And so I think that that is very valuable. Listen to the body, and obviously, do some trials on what works, but sit down with a professional first, so
Yeah.
you not bouncing back and forth like Dr. Steele just said.
Or even getting educated. So, like, for instance, like, we talk a lot about a mineral deficiency. So part of the benefits of meal planning, right, is that you make sure you plan ahead. You make sure you're getting all of your macronutrients, your proteins, fats, and carbs, but also making sure you're getting your key minerals, right? But let's say you want to test to be, because we don't guess, we test. And a lot of these things are very simple. So we can definitely break it down and teach very simple at-home tests that can be done, right, where you and your community can learn. So a simple thing that we used to do is they actually sell minerals, right, as like liquid. And what you would do is you would take these swabs of, you would kind of take a shot, if you will, of the minerals. And I believe it was like if you had a taste, right, then you were good. But if you didn't have a taste, then you were, and I may have had a reverse, it's been a while since I looked at it, but because obviously we use all kinds of crazy testing now. But I remember back when just the very simple basic tests that are not really used, underutilized in clinical practice, and are so valuable that if people really knew at home, like how easy, like just look at pH levels, right? So critical to understanding so many different bodily functions. And so if people plan ahead through meal planning and making sure that they're getting their adequate nutrients, they can obviously reach out to us for, our access to our app, as well as use other popular free apps. So to track your food, it's really about building awareness, because if you don't know what you're doing, how can you even plan your way out of it before you get into some of these advanced understandings?
Yeah, or you just, like you said before, you're just doing a bunch of bouncing around, and if you don't really understand the human body, you don't realize what you're really doing to yourself. I believe the human body kind of completely replaces itself every 9, 10, 11 months, somewhere around that time frame. And if you are over here one second, you letting McDonald's make you up, then the next second you over here and you letting whatever the pizza companies
Okay.
are make
Okay.
you
Yeah,
up. Then you switch it
exactly.
up, and now you're like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna eat healthy. I'm gonna just kind of try out a few things. Then next thing you know, you're doing
Um,
something else, and you relapsed. You don't realize what you're really doing to yourself when things
I
become challenging, when the weather becomes crazy.
100%. So I remember patients would come in for detox in my practice, right? Because we would have like foot detox machines. So they would come in for foot detoxes, and they come in after a long weekend, right? And they're like, I'm detoxing, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, great. What are you doing? Obviously they're doing a foot detox, but they're like, yeah, I'm on a juice fast, I'm on a water fast. And I'm like, but weren't you here last week talking about like how you can't give up certain things? They're like, yeah, but I'm, and it's that shock to the system, right? And then too, it's not sustainable. Like, this is supposed to be a lifestyle, right? Meal planning is a lifestyle. So I've had to climb through the desert of meal planning, right? In the beginning, I was like, okay, I'm going to prep everything on Sunday. I'm going to buy every grocery. I'm going to prep everything, and I'm going to make everything for the week. Well, what happened with me is by Wednesday, I would throw everything out and I'm calling Uber, right? Uber Eats, because the food just wasn't fresh. So I was like, okay, I can't do that, right? So I'm not going to do that. So now let me try to do it maybe like a day or two. Okay, that works, right? But now I've got to be conscious. I have to prioritize this. So having the tool, having the crock pot, right? Having the Ninja Combi, having a blender, right? And having these things at easy reach, and then setting yourself up ahead. So instead of just making one meal, make 2 or 3 and then throwing them in the refrigerator. I know there's a lot of really inexpensive meal services. You do have to be careful with them though, because again, they're not balancing your macros. There's a lot of filler in them. And, again, they're in the business of selling food. So consider that.
I'm really glad that you brought that up about these different companies that are doing meal planning. A lot of companies that are food vendors in a lot of different ways. And I'm saying this for the audience, okay? they're getting their food from places like, let's say, Cisco and maybe other locations that I don't know much about, right? But the reality of these locations are they're not consulting with Dr. Steele or with
No,
individuals who are her equivalent of education levels and of experience and background. So what's happening is now you're buying food that you don't actually know where it came from. You don't know exactly where it was grown. You don't know exactly how it was cultivated. You know, you're just getting a big old bag of bread or a big old bag of da 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 da, and it came from this distribution center, and now you're telling everybody this is healthy, this is heart healthy, this is da da da
right,
da da. So pay very close attention to what you're allowing to be a part of your meals, or and then pay attention to who you may be allowing to make your meals. It'd be much better with meal planning to do every piece of this yourself, because you are the one that's consuming this food. You should know exactly where it's coming from. If possible, you grew it. And why is that important? Well, it's important because what you eat, you become. And if you understand that you know this is what's going to happen to every single person, this is what is happening, then we got to be more responsible about it. We got to be more mature about it, more accountable. We got to be in sacrifice, and we got to be in humility in this space. And then it allows us to become who we are at a higher clip, magnitudinal levels,
yeah.
over and over
I
again.
I also think too, in that vein, we're more disconnected. It's weird. We have more access, but we're more disconnected, right? And we're disconnected from nature source. I remember, back when I was in Virginia, working with the farms and farmers market, because I opened the first raw food cafe. That was so like forward thinking. It was crazy. And so I realized like some farmers didn't grow, like they were paid not to grow. Some GMO farmers were paid very well to grow, right?
Don't even get started on
And
that.
I'm patching up their livers and stuff like that. So even when you go into, let's say a little farmer's market and you're thinking, oh, I'm doing good, you don't realize that even that vendor at the farmer's market literally just picked up from whatever major food supplier they had, but is using it as an opportunity to promote. So really discernment is super important. I am like very conscientious about food sourcing, and I feel like the more that we can prepare our own food, and I know like it is an overwhelming topic, like people are
Yeah.
just trying to survive, they're trying to get by, they're like, I don't want one more thing, and I understand. And so over time, right, we'll break down some very simple ways to incorporate these things. It doesn't have to be super difficult, but the important thing is to start thinking in advance, right? Planning things out. And I teach a 3-step system for meal planning, very simple, right? There's different types of meal planners. I won't get into all that, but really simple. Go into your pantry, or not your pantry, but your kitchen, right? And literally mark it out: proteins, carbs, and fats. And literally jot down everything that you have so far in your home in proteins, fats, and carbs, right? And then you'll see, okay, I've got a lot of fats, I got a lot of carbs. Some things will be maybe a fat and a protein, right? Like peanut butter is a fat and a protein, right? So maybe it'll be in both, right? But what you're doing is you're cataloging your food. So you're actually starting to plan your food based off of how the body works, which is in proteins, fats, and carbs, right? In different ratios, rather than, oh, what sounds good, what feels good, what tastes good in this moment. Like, no, I need a protein. I need to bring my blood sugar. I need to stabilize my blood sugar. I need a protein, right? Or, I'm going to go on a jog, this afternoon. So I'm going to need, a healthier protein and a fat. Or let's say I'm going to be kind of lounging around the house, just working. I'm going to need a lot of carbohydrate to keep my energy levels up, etc. When we start looking at what organ am I going to feed with this meal and how am I going to help my body get well, it's a different conversation than, what do you feel like tonight? Okay, pizza, okay, Chipotle, okay, whatever.
Everybody out there, if you are meal planning already, type 9. Put 9 in the comments. We want to hear from you. All right. All those out there who you getting to that level, or you've been interested in meal planning, type 3. Put it in the comments. Okay. We want to hear from everybody out there. We want to thank each and every one of you for being here with us Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the loves, the shares, and we encourage you to continue doing that. You know, Dr. Steele, we've talked a lot about how we should move about uh, meal planning. What I would like to ask you now is, what are some of the things that you would say we should keep out of our out of our meals that we put together ahead of time?
So again, if it's man-made, stay away from it. If it's God-made, eat it. So that eliminates quite a bit. But I'm not militant. I used to be super militant. Like I love chips. Now I won't have a whole bag of them in one sitting, right? But I will throw a handful on a salad that I'm eating, right? And so I think it's important too to understand that self-awareness, right? Some people, if it's in the house, they will eat it, right? I'm the kind of person that I've worked on my emotions to the point that I can have a little bit in the house and I'm not like, you know, sitting up waiting until the middle of the night, but it really just depends, right? And it's a discipline. There's a discipline involved. So, and everybody's where they're at in the journey. And as a holistic doctor, I'm very sensitive to people's emotional connections to food. And while I may say, okay, dairy, bread, pasta, rice, pasta that's obviously conventional made, artificial sweeteners, food dyes, additives, colorings, all the major players, gluten, any kind of part of the industrialized, I can say these things, right? But instantly, I'm sure somebody in the audience is going, not my, like it's like clutch my pearls. And what was so fascinating with me over treating all those people over those years is that it would even be something that they don't even eat regularly. It's just the fact of telling somebody, no, you can't do it. It's that negative psychology. So I never tell people that they can't do something. Instead, I go, okay, you have to have your peanut butter cups. All right, cool. More power to you. Can you have like maybe, a protein with that to balance it out? Or maybe, we're going to work on more nutrition in the morning. That way you're not hungry. Your blood glucose isn't crashing in the evening and you want it. Or maybe we work on the inner child and help heal the inner child who is sneaking and grabbing the peanut butter cups because she's looking for self-soothing or whatever. And so again, we have to look at it. And so I'm very sensitive to not shaming people, right? But there is, and I don't want to overwhelm people either because it's a lot of information and we're going to be here a while. Like, this is just a journey in the process. And I think it's important to remember that as a holistic lifestyle, even in the meal planning space, like you're going to do a lot of trial by fire, but it's the intention. So if I'm like, okay, I'm going to do what they say, I'm going to get a piece of paper, I'm going to organize, I'm going to run into the fact, I don't even know what a protein is. I don't even know what is this, like you're going to start to look at things differently. And that's really what it requires.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely the kind of mindset that more people need to walk into meal planning with is, I don't know what these things are. You know what? Let me protein, carbohydrates, lipids, fats. You know what? Let me go and hit the dictionary. Let me get an understanding of what these are. Let me watch a couple YouTube videos. I don't got to watch 50 of them for each one, but I can watch maybe two and I can have a
Yeah.
deeper understanding of each one of these because I'm not going to talk to Dr. Steele often, if ever.
Mhm.
I'm not going to talk to Dr. Sammy and Dr. Keisha often, if ever, right? So if I'm
Yeah.
not going to be able to talk to them on a consistent basis, well, maybe what I do is I empower myself, right? So one of the things, like I've gone deep, but I haven't gone deep enough in understanding exactly what not to put in this body. But what I have figured out is that we all need to limit or eliminate enriched flour. But are so many different types of flours that are in the grocery stores. We need to reduce those and/or eliminate them. Salt and when I say salt and sugar, for the audience, I'm talking about added salts and sugars. Right, your vegetables that already have salts and sugar in them, that's good for you. But if you're adding salts and sugars, we need to minimize those because those things that extra taste, it costs. Everything in this existence costs. Everybody, please hear me. Everything in this existence costs, right? So if you put a little extra salt on your plate and it wasn't really necessary, well, you just traded minutes,
Mhm.
hours, maybe even weeks off your life just to put some salt on your plate, just to put some sugar up there, just to drink a Coca-Cola or whatever it is that you might be doing. So in your meal planning, please make sure that you reduce and or eliminate things that aren't serving. And if they come in packages, more than likely they're not serving. You want to eat whole
Correct.
foods that are whole.
Exactly. It's all the additive things. And we're not even aware of food combinations. We're not aware, like for instance, glucose, your fruit should be eaten by itself, right? In proper food pairing, right? A protein and a fat does better together, right? Rather than, let's say, a fat and a carb. And so, you know, it's really, these are things that I've learned, right, along the journey, right? And I used to be able to regurgitate this stuff. I don't. I'm like not at that place anymore where I even want to do that, because I really want more of mental, emotional, spiritual balance. But I also want people to take this information and bring it into their lives. It's not about getting the inspirations as much as it about the practical application and bringing this in, right? And so I would get curious about something. I'd say, okay, I need to, Monday, I need to get my life together, right? And then what do I need to do to get my life together? Okay, I'm going to get my mindset. So I'm going to meditate. That's the first thing. All right. And now I got that down. Now I'm going to drink half my body weight in ounces in water, right? And now I'm going to plan my meals and structure those. I'm going to focus on my proteins first. Then I'm going to make sure my fats are down. Then I'm going to, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is a step by step. And if you follow it, it's very progressive. Now, if you're totally lost and you do want my insight, I do have courses, online courses for different types of meal planning, etc. But I think the conversation, I hope, sparks curiosity, right? And the curiosity should be that you just want to know what's in your food, right? If you don't start asking these questions, right, it may be unfortunately too late, because there's tons of stuff in our food that should not be in our food, especially if you're in the United States, right? Because they literally go out of their way to put toxins in your food.
That's a straight up fact. I was looking at some videos. Every now and again, I do a little bit of scrolling on social media.
Mhm.
I try not to, but I do it on occasion. And I was watching this video of like 1950s America, and you got a bunch of these Caucasian high school children, and they're looking like they're in basic training for the army, right? Well, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, well, for these children to have this amount of energy, they would have to they would have to be eating properly, or they'd have to be eating closer to what proper is supposed to be. And it's like we've had. Well, I know it's not like, but I'm just saying it's like we've had a decline in the effectiveness of the food. Like the chicken of yesterday is not the chicken of today. The kale of yesterday is not the kale of today. Right? It's a big change in what people are eating to this day. I would imagine people would have to eat double the amount of kale today as they'd have to eat yesterday to have
Yeah.
whole health.
Well, and that's a lot of the argument, against supplements. So there's like a purist community, I think, in holistic health at times, who, believe that, oh, it should only be natural. And while that very may be true, right? In order to, we have to also think practical reality, right? So for instance, if I'm working with a patient and I'm like, oh, this is the diet that you need to have, and unfortunately they can't afford it or they don't have access to it, right, we have to deal with life on life's terms. We can't, conflate it and contort it to make it seem better for ourselves. And so I think if we again cut the shame and really just begin with self-awareness, begin with being cognizant of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. That's why oftentimes with me, that's the first step. And it's so frustrating for patients because they love being in the action. They love, okay, what's my 10-step list? But a 10-step list is not going to get you whole health. It'll get you a quick fix, but it takes a series of actions and commitments and decisions every single day in order to ensure that you're healthy. And we have to be more diligent, especially because, like you referenced, bioavailability concerns, the amount of nutrition that we need to eat in order to get the, amount that we needed. There's just so many different concerns with our food and our food supply. We just need to do our part.
Absolutely. That's a straight up fact. I highly recommend every parent out there. We're obviously meal planning is not just for the children, it's for us all. But I highly recommend every parent out there that y'all take the time to grow a garden. This is how you can guarantee what is in the food that you are feeding yourself and feeding your children. And it might be a little challenging, but I guarantee it's worth it. The explosion of intellect growth, cognitive growth, the how much stronger the foundation of your child's bones, their muscles, their blood flow, all of that goes through the roof by creating food yourself using nature, because you might have a little bit of toxicity in your food from chemtrails and things like that you just don't have too much control over. But a lot of the other things that people are having in their food, you won't have those things in your food because you grew it yourself. Especially if you went and got some manure from a local farm, and that was kind of like your base of your soil. You mixed it in with your natural soil, and you weren't necessarily buying a bunch of bags of soil from the local hardware store or whatnot. Well, now you're going to get a different kind of quality food that you just can't pay for in the grocery store. And if you were to pay for it, you'd have to go to a place like Whole Foods or Wegmans to get a similar quality. Chances are the quality of your food would be so much better that if you was to sit down and talk with Wegmans or Whole Foods, they want to carry your vegetables in their grocery store.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that's what we have to consider. The farther away from source it is, right? The more, I mean, there's no, Whole Foods wilderness jungles anywhere. We don't see Trader Joe's out there in the middle of wherever, like there it's industrialized, and no matter how prettily packaged it is, right? Because I don't know if you guys remember that, right? But Amazon purchased Whole Foods, and also too, Monsanto was on their board of directors at one point. I don't know if they still are, but when you go into their store, it's very carefully curated to make you feel like you're in this experience. It's very, I always used to joke, it's like, oh, people feel relevant, because they have their Whole Foods bag. And I'm not knocking on Whole Foods. We call it Whole Paycheck, but I digress. What I'm saying is that, it's not about the way it looks on the outside. It's about how you're feeling on the inside. And so
Yes.
it's about bonding with the food, connecting with the food. I absolutely agree. If you have kids, I took my daughter strawberry picking. We went apple tree. I mean, all kinds of different experiences with nature where she understood where her food came from. She understood how it's grown. Understanding these things as children is so key because it's going to inform how they think about the world.
Absolutely. And every parent out there, and even if you're not a parent and you're listening, first of all, please love, like, share, and comment. But other than that, I really want y'all to understand the value. All right. I'm a father of six. Okay. One of our children is an adult, and she doesn't live with us, but the younger five children, they live with us, and we feed our children as much as possible from our garden when we're in harvest. But
Mhm.
other than that, we're still sourcing our food a certain kind of way. We're definitely going picking strawberries, picking blackberries, picking blueberries, maybe peaches, apples. Right, so we're trying to get it direct from the farm as often as possible. And every parent out there, I highly recommend y'all get it direct from the farm as well. Many of our herbs that we consume for our medicine, if we're having issues or just to better our health, we grow a lot of those herbs, or we source them from locations and places, from people that we have a certain amount of trust for. Right. So every parent out there, I know you tell your child every day, I love my son, I love my daughter. Right. And I believe you. I believe that you do love your children, but I want you to step up a notch of how you prove that you love your children. Pay attention to how they're constructing themselves through the food that you are giving them. And you do this very effectively through meal planning.
I also want to give rise to, because we as Black women, especially, when we hear children, that's our first instinct is children, right? And we've been conditioned again to self neglect. And so we want to do this for us first, right? Let's us start prepping our own meals. Let's us start planning them out. Let's include them in our process, right? But it's solely our process. And why is that? Because you're going to be more impactful if you're modeling behavior rather than telling everybody. You can't sit everybody down and be like, okay, this is what you're going to do. You could, but they're going to, if they're super obedient, great. But I didn't get that. So, my daughter was like, I said, go right. And she's like left, out the door, gone around the corner. So, I had to, I remember the whole gentle parenting thing came through. And I was like, I have to have a gentle kid in order to gentle parent. Like, y'all, like, this is this is a long. I tried it. I failed. I had to maneuver. And so I really am very conscientious, because I know as a mom, and especially I was a single mom, and I struggled so much with wanting to do perfect for her that I neglected myself. And by the time I even realized how much I had neglected myself, I taught her inadvertently to do similar, right? And so I don't want to pass down that. You don't want to pass down that over giving and self-sacrificing. Rather, you want to show, okay, I'm feeding myself. I don't know what y'all are doing, but I'm meal planning, I'm prepping, I'm doing this, because instantly when you have an idea and you're like, hey, let's plan our meals, everybody's like, I don't want that, I don't want to do that, da, 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 da. You're gonna get peanut gallery. And I get it, everybody's got an opinion. However, I think if you get this skill first and work it and then share it with, then you'll be more steadfast and strong when you're going to get opposition, because just know you're going to get opposition.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm glad that you brought up mothers and I brought up parents. There's many people out there who are meal planning and they don't have children yet. Ladies, if you're not a mother yet and you're meal planning, be very, a lot of the ladies like using this word, be very intentional about what you're doing, because you have a great opportunity, in my opinion. You have an opportunity to properly prepare your womb and properly prepare your temple for the moment of conception. And this is a very rare thing for a lot of the ladies of today. They're not really thinking, let me go ahead and really prepare my temple. Let me make sure I'm whole before I decide to get pregnant. And sometimes the pregnancies are, you know, scheduled, and
Yes,
other times
exactly.
they're not.
Anticipating.
but
Exactly.
but if we have our temple prepared, and this is not just for the ladies, because I'm not trying to single out ladies who haven't had children. The men also need to do similar, in my opinion. You need to take the time to make sure your temple is right before you decide you're going to do anything that could create procreation.
Correct. 100%. I think there's so many aspects of this conversation. Number one, independently, whichever side of the fence you're on, the giver or the receiver, you've got to prepare your body, right? Because you're coming together to create life. And so, however your life state is how your life state is going to be. And we are very reactionary, but we can also attribute to why all of that is. And that's not necessarily this platform, but we want to be aware and conscious of, okay, if I want to have a family, I don't need to rush into this, right? But more so, even as women, and we talk about decentralizing men in general, is like, how about I just want to have a healthy, optimally running body for a lifetime, right? Because we know that the healthcare system has so many inefficiencies, especially for women and just horrendous for Black women. So, I think that this is very proactive instead of reactive. I think your food is a corner source. You cannot supplement a poor diet. I know we all just want to like not have to eat and hook up to an IV and take a pill and that be solved. But that is not how our bodies were created, however you think that occurred. And so we have to manage our bodies, actually how our bodies function. And so an understanding of how our bodies work. Now, again, just like anything else, there's health goals, right? So my health goal may be like, hey, I want to trim this down, or my health goal may be I want to prepare to have a family, or my health goal may be, I want to run the fastest or whatever. But I think we have goals for everything else in life, but we tend to neglect our health.
That's a fact. I like as many people out there as possible who are listening, who are watching. Compare yourself to a vehicle, to an automobile, right? So, like for me, if I'm comparing myself to an automobile, there's only one. the
Uh-oh.
James Bond 007 Aston Martin. Right? But some people may compare themselves to a Ferrari. Some people may compare themselves to a Range Rover or a Corvette or a number of other different vehicles.
Hold on, that's a good point. Hold on really quick. What car do you think I would be?
You?
What do you think I would be?
A Rolls Royce.
A Rolls? Really? That old car?
Well,
Dang.
I mean, it's an old company, but I wasn't necessarily talking about an old Rolls Royce. I was talking about a brand new one that Jay-Z might buy for the
he said, so whatever I think about Rolls Royce, I think about like super. No, I'm definitely more modern. I'm Audi all the way. I'm all-wheel drive. I'm versatile. I'm
Okay.
sleek. I'm elegant. I can be a grocery getter, or I can, go off road. I like the diversity. So, anywho, I just thought that would be fun. So go ahead, go ahead, continue. Rolls Royce. I'm gonna have to look that up. That's some old dusty. But go ahead.
Well, see it was all off the top of the head. But if you look at the brand new Rolls Royces, you'll be like, oh man, yeah, husband,
I'm gonna have to check
yeah,
those
pick me up one of those. No, but on some real stuff. The reason why I brought up the automobiles is because we all think of ourselves at different levels, right? So if I show up with a 1993 Toyota Sentra, and you need a car, you'll be happy to drive it, right? But you'll probably sit back and look at it like, man, I ain't taking care of this or whatever. But if I hand you a Maybach, chances are you're going to be sitting back like, nah, I want this joker to look good. I want it to operate well. I want to maintain the value of it. So if I choose to sell it, now I can get, a good price for it. Well, if you look at yourself that way, your meal planning is going to be different. The way you care for yourself is going to be, the way you sleep is going to be different. Your water intake, your sunlight intake, so many other pieces of your life, your lifestyle is going to be totally different. So you don't necessarily have to compare yourself to an automobile. Maybe you could compare yourself to a jumbo jet or one of these military jets or something, or maybe specific animals or something, right? But just kind of like associate in a way yourself with something that you would take the maintenance serious on it, right? Because if you do that, what happens is now you've stepped into this space where you're going to take your maintenance serious. And if you do, now your lifestyle is just totally different throughout the years. You still got challenges like everybody else. Everybody has challenges. Nobody gets to get away from those unless you decide to go 6 feet under. Right. But as long as you're alive, you get to have these challenges. Well, the challenges don't have to be as hard as they have seemed. Right. But that's based upon your maintenance. And your maintenance are going to be things like Dr. Steele was talking about earlier in the conversation: meditation, affirmation, exercise, and all the other 6 keys of life that I consistently talk about. But this will help you be more balanced in your meal planning. And it will translate to your children, because our children never become, well, I'm going to say never, let's say most of the time, they don't become what we tell them to become. Most of the time, they become what we are, right? So if you up your maintenance on you, and you operate in that space of maturity, accountability, responsibility, humility, and sacrifice, well, now what happens is your children who want to be just like you because you're Superwoman and you're Superman to them, well, now they start operating in this same space and you didn't even have to tell them.
Exactly. It's very intrinsic, and you're not forcing, right? It's very natural, it's very organic. And that's, I think, the big thing with a holistic lifestyle is it's not forced. Everybody wants to try to fit it into the constructs of conventional practice, and it just doesn't work. There is natural resistance to things. Now, there's natural resistance to change, as we know, but also too, when we're making an expansion of things, we have to deconstruct mentally, emotionally, spiritually, from whatever blocks, because we're holding on, why we're holding on to that, there's an underbelly to it. And so being gentle with ourselves. I just think the mindset has to shift, that nobody's going to save us. We have to take control of our own health. We have to educate ourselves. We have to begin to plan ahead of time for our health, rather than just going, oops, it just happened. And I think health insurance is a really good example of this. The purpose of health insurance is not to manage your health for you, right? Imagine if you called your car insurance and said, hey, I need new tires, I need oil change, hey, that 10,000 miles about to come up. They would laugh at you. Like, they would be like, no, that's your responsibility. But for some reason, we assume that health insurance's role, and probably because it's so expensive and you get so little for it, is that is going to be the answer. And health insurance is not going to help you meal plan. In fact, please call Blue Cross Blue Shield and ask them for their resources on meal planning, because have they ever? And so again, we've got to start to disconnect from these oppressive systems that are not serving us in so many ways. And so I think it just begins with building this awareness. And sometimes, like, this is brand new information for people, but if you can think about your body, I know that I don't, it's so easy to use the car as an analogy, but again, like, some people take care of their cars better than their bodies. They plan out their oil changes, their filter changes, they make it a priority, but they don't make meal planning a priority.
Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah, we definitely got to do a lot more connecting with the ancestral realm. We've got to do a lot more of getting into that tribal space, getting out there on the earth, and really seeing what's real. When you get out there on the earth for a few days, couple of weeks, you could only carry so much food with you. Now you got to figure it out, right? Because people have been here for millions of years. So how did they eat before we had Starbucks and Chipotle? How did they eat before Chick-fil-A and McDonald's and Cheesecake Factory and all these different restaurants, right? Well,
Right.
people who live in the bush, they're getting it all from the earth,
Oh
and we can too. These are things that we just need to add little pieces of it at a time. Like, y'all, everybody out there who's listening to me, thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all so much for the likes, the loves, the shares, and the comments. But take the things that I'm suggesting and the things that Dr. Steele is suggesting, and just take it in bite-sized steps, just a little
yeah.
bit at a time. Eventually you'll be able to jump from 10,000 to 100,000, 100,000 to a million to 10 million. Eventually, you'll be able to make those magnitudal level jumps, right? But in the beginning, just go from 1.1 to 1.2, and then 1.2 maybe to 1.4, and then 1.4 to 1.8, right? And then eventually you get to 2, and then you get to 3, and next thing you get to 10, right? Take the steps in the amount of time and the amount that you can palate, right? But just make sure that you're taking a step every single day. And keep in mind what Dr. Steele was saying earlier about carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins, right? We got to have proper balance. This whole game, everything we're doing in this life, is literally about balance, all of it,
Yeah.
right? So we've got to have balance in nutrition. We got to have balance in sunlight. We got to have balance in water, balance in sleep, balance in relationships with people, right? Balance in meal planning.
Yeah. And science gets a bad rap. It really does, because people are like, oh no, whatever, it's not scientific. That's not true. We have biochemistry is a science, right? It's a bioscience. And so you don't have to understand all of it, but understanding the basics, proteins, fats, and carbs, right? I proteins for long-term energy, carbs for short-term, proteins for healing, short carbohydrates for short-term energy, fats for long-term energy stores. There's different ratios, but I also need certain nutrients to break those things down. And we can talk more. But when you're healing the gut, everybody's talking about healing the gut, healing the digestive system, the gut-brain axis. We know that our mental health, our hormonal health, our immune system is all based off the gut. How do we heal our gut? We have to start with our food. Before you put a supplement in your mouth, before you do any crazy detox regimen, fix your food. So mindset, water, food, in that order.
You know, one of the things that I wanted to touch on before we conclude is about so like before I send one of my clients on some type of a detoxification regimen, fasting and all of that. Before I even take them down that path, I normally like to take them down like a 10-day, what I call a 10-day primer period, where they're just eating raw, so they can up their minerals, up their nutrition content in their body, right? When it comes down to meal planning, those who are really planning to walk this journey, is that something that you would recommend to them?
Oh my God, meal planning is key. I think meal planning is it offers so much. It offers education so you can learn your food and what balances best with what. Actually tracking your food, which I'm a huge advocate. I know everybody groans, but if you don't track it, how do you know it exists, right? Like, because we lie to ourselves all the time. I'm not disillusioned. I know we lie to ourselves, we lie to each other, right? And so when we're tracking it, we have to be aware and honest, right? And so that's the first thing. We go, oh my gosh, I'm eating 3 days worth of fat in one day. Holy cow, maybe I need to go and get a therapist, or maybe I need to go for a walk more, or maybe I'm bored, that's why I'm doing it. It just gives insight in. And then from there, like I said, go into your pantry, organize it, proteins, fats, and carbs, right? That is how I think about my food. I think about, okay, what nutrients do I need to balance and when? Like, for instance, I can tell I definitely need a little bit of protein because my glucose, right? So I have my tea, then I'm, it's about it's about on time, my lunchtime, right? My body naturally tells me that. Why? Because I've trained it to do that. And so how have I trained it to do that? Because I had a mindset to do it. I learned, which we'll teach you on Holistic Solution and all of my other programs as well. And then it's the practical application. So now it's your part. We've done our part. Now it's how are you going to apply this information into your life? And that's really where the magic is. And that's where I recommend people to get a journal and really write about what is coming up for them through this process, because it's going to be a struggle. I mean, I know for me, it was a struggle at times. There was times where I wanted to eat certain things and I was like, but I've got this goal and I'm literally battling with myself in my dang kitchen. And so these things are realistic. And I think that definitely on Thursday's show, I'm hoping that more people will reach out to us and start to ask those questions and start to be like, hey, I'm noticing, I eat all my food for the day, but then I'm still going into snack. Why is that? Or, I'm noticing this, what about this? What's a better way, or what's an easier way? Or what's a resource that I can use for this, etc. We really want to cultivate a very interactive experience.
Absolutely. And all of our viewers out there, I want to big up Dr. Steele just for a moment. Okay. Listen, there are 6 accredited naturopathic doctorate programs in North America. I believe 2 of them are in Canada, 3 are in the United States, and 1's in Mexico. Okay. And that means that there are very, very few naturopathic doctors running around North America right now. Okay. Dr. Steele is one of them. If she's giving you some advice, listen, it would be wise to follow it. Okay. If she's giving you some kind of knowledge that's going to help you go to the next level, listen, use it. Right. You don't necessarily have to trust her. Just try it and see what happens. Right. A good measure of trying something new is 21 days. Right.
Yeah.
3 weeks. Try it out for 3 weeks. See how it works for you. And on top of that, listen, I'm telling y'all right now, you've got a major opportunity here. Okay. Because every Thursday, I'm sending out the link. so that y'all can come into the studio and y'all can come and talk to Dr. Steele yourself. All right. Listen, you're not going to get a chance to talk to a doctor usually for longer than 90 seconds. Most of the time, the doctor is going to do all the talking, right? This is going to be one of those situations where you could have a conversation with a naturopathic doctor, someone who knows the earth like the back of their hand and understands medicine, understands the doctor room, under all the words that I ain't using very well. She uses them to perfection. You can come in and you can talk to her on Thursdays from 12 to 12:30. Obviously, you can't have the whole time, but you can have one or two questions. And I hope I
Yeah.
see each and every one of you here because this is a rare opportunity. Now, if y'all know a bunch of other naturopathic doctors, go ahead, go talk to them, right? But if you don't know no other naturopathic doctors and all you know is medical doctors, you might want to come here and be a part of the holistic solution every single week.
Yeah. So I want to clean up a few things, and I'm so glad that you brought this up. So the 6 schools that you talked about, we legislate against those schools, and here's why.
Wow.
Though those 6 schools, right, use a combination of naturopathy, but also are using allopathic clinical diagnose and manage model. So again, we have more dissension. So true naturopathic doctors, right? And I'm more than naturopathic doctor. I'm a holistic doctor, right? And we can talk more about that. But in the world of naturopathy, right, there are even fewer schools that protect natural practices. And that is what I would fight and legislate against, oftentimes to much larger lobbying funding and all kinds of things, but really to protect, because even yourself, as well read and educated you are, you even assumed that I was part of that group. And that group actually is very dangerous because they're hybrid trained. They're only partially trained in conventional practice and they're partially trained in natural practice. And again, I respect medical doctors greatly. They are trained to diagnose and manage a disease. If a person's health gets to a certain point where the disease process takes over because they haven't been responsible and they haven't done what I've asked them to do or whatever, thank God we have medical doctors to help us, right? They've extended life, etc. However, that is not our role as naturopaths. And that's not our role as holistic doctors. Our role is to improve the function of the body. When you look at the roots of naturopathy, when you look at Dr. Benedict Lust, when you look at the congressional record that's still federally held today, so understand these schools are going against the federal record, congressional record that states naturopathy is a drugless therapy. That's on a federal level. But you have NMDs, naturopathic medical doctors in Oregon prescribing opioids to patients, thinking that they are qualified and that's within their scope of practice.
You know, Dr.
So,
Steele, while we're over here on this point, while I'm going to hand the mic back to you just a second.
sure.
Please touch on the legislation that you're working
Yeah.
on. We need to get as much support on that as possible.
We absolutely do. So here's why I've kind of converged from my naturopathic counterparts, because like all of these systems, they're missing us. They're missing Black people. They're missing Indigenous people, right? They're missing who actually originally created all this. And it's been colonized.
The
So
mama.
no matter, yeah, it's been all colonized. And so why would I want to get in bed with my oppressor? Why? You know, I believe with the work I've done and releasing, 20 plus years worth of public health education knowledge, for free, by the way, and really wanting to educate the general public and get qualified practitioners. Because here's the thing, if we do not get enough qualified, educated practitioners who can treat the masses, we are going to be in a world of hurt. So this is really a call for people who are interested in this path. It's not easy. As a teacher, I don't play, because these are people's lives that you have. And so I take that oath very seriously to first do no harm. Naturally, I'm starting a And I've been talking about this for years, and we're in that launching process of a historical Black holistic medical school. And these are global schools. These are not just nationally, they're hybrid. So it's, where we work online, and then you come to on site and working with the land and getting connected back. We have a cohort for holistic health coaches that I'm starting up in October. So if anybody's interested in that, and really, I'm in my PhD right now in international psych, and I did a lot of legislation in Virginia, and now I really want to push more on the federal level for HR 40 so that we have study for reparations. But here's the thing about this study. I want to make sure that through this, we get our own healthcare system. We get our own, supported, because we cannot trust the the Western medical system. There's been too much harm. And I admire those Black medical doctors who are trying, who are making huge inroads in that field. I get it. I empathize. But I just, with good conscience, knowing what I know about the history, I cannot lead my people into a burning building. I have to step out, and I have to really communicate what needs to be heard, which is that we have ultimate power and control over our health. We don't have to be practice dummies anymore. We don't have to be test subjects. And that's what we're doing. We're literally being tested on all the time.
I'm really glad that you brought all that up, and I want to make it very clear. We have entered a new matriarchal age. We've entered the age of Aquarius. We've entered a time frame where not only do we need to trust our women and trust the spiritual femininity that we all have within us, we need to move back to the ways of the ancestors as much as possible. It says in the Bible to honor thy mother and father for thy days to be long upon the earth, and understand that scripture is about your ancient foremothers and forefathers. And the way that they lived is the way that we're supposed to be operating to this day. Now, obviously, we've taken in a certain amount of comfortability, right? Which is the reason why it might be kind of hard for us to go back to the full bush lifestyle. But what we can do is we can find a middle ground between this digital age lifestyle that we have come to enjoy and our ancient ancestors' way of life. And now what we've done is we've created a certain level of sustainability that we couldn't have got any other way, right? But for that, we're going to have to trust the experts in the room. We're going to have to trust those who have put in the work and are actively walking that path. Well, one of those people is Dr. Steele. There's a number of other ones. They are few when it comes to percentage, but there's a number of other ones out there, but Dr. Steele's one of them, right? So listen, take the time to listen to what Dr. Steele has to say. Follow those directions, because at the end of the day, we need divine feminine energy to lead us out of what has happened. This patriarchal system that we are dealing with right now that has been oppressive to all of us in some which way, shape, or form. For us to move past that and move into a new paradigm, we have to allow that spiritual feminine energy. We have to allow mama to come in. We got to allow mama to do her work.
And I would say too, it's like, because naturally as a Black woman, that whole mama thing, I'm done with that. Ain't your mama, you your mama, and you have to take care of yourself, right? I'm just a teacher, right? A wayward
Well,
teacher.
just understand, I wasn't talking about like a woman mama. I was talking about the universe mama, the big mama.
So nonetheless, we have different levels of understanding that are watching the show. Okay. So, I love the complexity, but woman, Black woman, mama, take care of me. No. So it's so unconscious. It's an unconscious stereotype. It's an unconscious bias. I talk tomorrow on my Respect Black Women podcast about where the trope, strong Black woman comes from, and how that is pervasive, even as a child, where we're parentified, right, as Black women at an early age. And so we're shouldered with the responsibility of that. So again, and that male dynamic, right, we're shouldered more with the responsibility, right, but we're also left to blame too when things don't work out. And so the thing is that we all collectively have to take sovereignty and personal responsibility. We are just messengers, right? And I may grab, oh, that resonated, or oh, that resonated, or oh, that resonated over here, right? But then I'm feeding all of this information into discerning, and I'm going, that's for me. Nope, that's not for me. That's for me. Oh, that. And how you get that level of intuition is through your diet. The cleaner your diet, the cleaner your intuition will be, guaranteed. If the more junky your diet, the more your intuition's going to be junky. And also too, just because you're eating a healthy diet doesn't guarantee now all of a sudden you're all, whatever. You still have to process your emotional trauma. And that is really, really challenging for a lot of people.
Absolutely, 100%. Well, Dr. Steele, it's been an amazing conversation. I definitely have learned much more about meal planning, and I hope everybody out there in the audience has learned a lot about meal planning. Listen, we're here with the Holistic Solution, Dr. Steele and Ferdinand, every Tuesday and Thursday. All right, so Tuesday is our main episode where we're going to be kind of duking it out, figuring out the way forward. But then Thursdays, we come back and we invite you into the room. Come on in and ask Dr. Steele some questions. Come on in and ask Ferdinand some questions. Let's figure out the way forward, because understand that Ferdinand and Dr. Steele might know a whole lot, but Ferdinand and Dr. Steele are on their own journey as well. We want to learn from you. So
Yes.
Come on in the room on Thursdays, right? We can't wait to hear from you, no matter whether you're a little bit novice in this information, or you're at the PhD level in this information, or you come from indigenous tribes and grandmas teach you, right? Come on in the room. We want to learn from everybody, all right? Thank y'all so much for today. It was a good conversation. Looking forward to you.
Sorry. Really quick, I want to say this one last thing. Remember that we've all been taken from our original lands, okay? And we've all been scattered all over this globe. But think about each one of us having a piece of the pie, right? So what we're asking, I don't care where you learned it naturally. You could have figured it out yourself. You could have learned it from grandma, whatever. What I would collectively want the globe, we want a movement of holistic medicine. We want people to bring all of your remedies, all of your experience, all of your wisdom, and we want to, in kind, give you structure so that it can help you flourish and you develop in your holistic health journey so that you can help your community. So it's really a global mission. I have a lot of education. Ferdinand has a lot of education, but I still, some of the most amazing, I'll leave with this last anecdotal story. I remember I trained in genetics and methyl genetics, and, we're in a room with all kinds of different providers, and there was this Amish man that was in there that was actually learning, right, about genetics. And he started treating, he was their community healer. And how he started was working on horses. And he learned from working on horses and then eventually got up to humans. And now he was sitting in a room with me and a whole bunch of doctors learning genetics and methyl genetics before it was even a thing. So we really need to just return back to our roots. And I believe in structure. I believe in organization from a public health safety perspective. I don't believe in structure as an oppressive force that shuts people out and says, you're good enough because you went to these schools, or you're not good enough because you didn't go to these schools. And that is unfortunately what has gone on since the millennia.
Yep. All right, y'all. Listen, we'll be back on Thursday at 12:30. Come on in. I'm gonna send the link out in the comments. You see us on the video, look at the comments, click the link, come on in the room and learn a little bit, and come and teach us something too, right? Let's make it an exchange. And everybody's got something to exchange. Trust and believe it. No matter where you are in your educational journey, you got something to teach, and you more than likely got a whole lot that you can learn from the both of us. So let's work together. Let's move in unity. Let's move in the Bantu, and let's take the holistic solution, and let's take our whole health to a whole nother level.